I grow a lot of different kinds of edible plants mixed into the landscaping. I do my best to diversify the edible options with permaculture-style intercropping. But if I could only grow one, if I only had space to grow one type of edible plant, I would grow something that is packed full of nutrients, loaded with antioxidants, and has a variety of uses in the kitchen. It would have to have a decent shelf life while it's fresh, easily preserved for long-term storage, and easy to grow. Most importantly though, it would have to be hardy enough to survive the Central Florida climate. I spent hours of research preparing for this video, and one of the things I learned surprised me. Other things I learned just confused me. For example, this plant is in the Brassica family, along with cabbage, and Brassica means cabbage. But that same family also includes broccoli, Brussels sprouts, named after the city Brussels in Belgium, collard greens, and cauliflower, which is derived from col flori. That's a combination of the Latin word col, meaning cabbage, and flori, meaning flower. Not to be confused with Florida, which is one of these 50 United States of America, whose name is also rooted in a foreign word that translates to flower. So cauliflower is a cabbage flower, as opposed to cabbage that doesn't have a flower, or broccoli that's also a cabbage that flowers, or kale, which is rooted in the Latin word caulis, which means stem, or cabbage, and basically refers to the cabbage with the stem, not to be confused with kohlrabi, which is cabbage that's eaten for the stem. Kohlrabi is also called German cabbage, or German turnip, not to be confused with turnips that are also in the cabbage family.
That's so unnecessarily confusing.
I know, right? I know!
Depending on which website you check, kale is a descendant of wild mustard, also in the cabbage family, or a wild cabbage. Some handle different climates better than others, but most, if not all of them, can even survive the cooler temperatures. This is why all of the brassicas are considered cold crops as well as cold crops. It's highly nutritious. In addition to vitamins A and C, calcium, potassium, and magnesium, it's one of the best plant-based sources of vitamin K. It's also a good source of fiber, antioxidants, and carotenoids. That all means that kale is good for the heart, good for the eyes, good for circulation, good for nutrition, transportation, it's good for digestion, and it's a detox that's good for the liver. The leaves can be chopped up and cooked, blended into a smoothie, or tossed into a salad. I add kale powder into my eggs at breakfast almost every morning, all year long. One of the dishes my wife and I eat regularly is a simple dish containing our homegrown kale, our homegrown sweet potatoes, some spices, and some sausage.
So good.
It's quick, it's easy, it's inexpensive, and since it's all cooked in one cast iron skillet, it's also fast to clean up afterwards. Or, to save them for about a week in the fridge, pat each leaf dry, wrap the leaves with paper towels, and put them in a sealable bag. The paper towels help to control the moisture on the outside of each leaf, while the bag keeps the leaves from drying out. The leaves can also be frozen to preserve them for about 6 months. Just lay the leaves out on a baking sheet and pop them into the freezer for 2 or 3 hours. Then put them into a freezer-safe container for storage. Kale can be blanched prior to freezing or frozen raw. Either way works well. Personally, my favorite way to preserve kale is with the dehydrator. I lay out the leaves and run it for 4 to 8 hours at about 100 degrees. When they break apart like chips, I call them done. Then I pass them through a coffee grinder a few times until it reaches a nice powder that can be added just like any other season. By far, the most common way to grow kale is from seed. It germinates fairly easily in about a week, and in my area, they can be started just about any time during the year. They germinate indoors and grow under lights fairly well too. That means you can even get a jump start on the spring season. Or if needed, kale can actually be grown in a container on a balcony, or even inside. I don't want to baby my plants. I want them to face some stress. I also want to make sure I don't abandon them, face more stress than they can handle. Kale has a high percentage of water in its leaves. Since I want to eat the leaves, I want it to grow more leaves, so I can eat them too. All brassicas tend to want a lot of water. The more leaves they grow, the more water they need. During high growth time periods, they need more water, and in hotter temperatures, they'll also need more water. During the summer in Central Florida, it's hard to overwater brassicas, like kale, as long as the roots have time to dry out in between soaks. Brassicas also want to be well fed. After a quick internet search, it appears that the consensus is for kale to receive a balanced NPK blend, something like a 5-5-5 or a 10-10-10. Since this video isn't about different types or methods of fertilizing plants, I'll just mention that I typically feed mine with homemade vermicast and chop and drop coverings. That seems to keep them happy. I also watch out for pests. When, not if, the pests arrive, I don't remove them immediately. I wait for the circle of life to complete the cycle. What I mean is that I let the lizards eat the pests. I let the wasps eat the pests. I let the birds eat the pests. And my personal favorite, I let the ladybugs eat the pests. In my yard, aphids typically show up on bean vines first. Shortly after that, the ladybug population will explode by eating the aphids. But if I was to remove the aphids, the circle of life would be broken. The ladybugs wouldn't have anything to eat and their population wouldn't explode. That means I wouldn't have very many ladybugs crawling around eating the aphids. And before long, it would be nothing but work,
Quack all the time.
trying to keep the aphid population in check.
Yummy.
Besides, some stress for the plants is good for them. It helps them to build strength. And since I can't always be there for all of my plants all the time, I need them to be strong enough to survive on their own. At least to some degree. Kale is very durable, and I've had plants live for years. This one is at least 3 years old. But it has certain times of the year when it flourishes, and other times of the year when it's just getting by. In Central Florida, we have alternating seasons where it rains every day for months. Then we get almost no rain for months. Kale is durable enough to handle both extremes. Although, when we go too long without rain, and our afternoon highs are in the mid to upper 90s, the leaves will start to droop. The actual heat doesn't seem to hurt the plants though. I just make sure it gets a good soak from the water hose, and the leaves will bounce back. For some plants, like sweet potatoes and pepper plants, this is just a normal part of their day trying to survive the high temperatures. Some stress is good for plants though, and this was a good level of stress. It forces them to dig their roots deeper and farther looking for moisture and nutrients. In the long run, this will help them grow better for longer. While most brassicas can technically survive the climate that we have here in Central Florida, it's extremely difficult to help them to grow well enough, to grow enough food to make it worth the effort. But kale can thrive. I have grown a few different curly kales. The flavor and texture is good in salads. But from my experience, they are more prone to pests and diseases. So when I grow them now, it's for use as a sacrificial trap plant. I've also grown flat-leaf kales. These make for a great substitute for spinach, mustard greens, or collard greens in a southern sauté. But for me, they seem to grow too slow, and the leaves are far too tough to eat raw. Therefore, I prefer Lacinato kale. It's more pest-resistant and disease-resistant, and it grows really well in my yard. In my opinion, it has the best flavor profile of the bunch, and the leaves are tender enough to eat raw in a salad while sturdy enough to use in a cooked dish. And on that note, it's dinner time. So thank you for growing with me today. Until next time, I'm going to keep on growing. And you should too.